Dad's Army is remembered as warm, harmless British comedy. But behind the laughs were moments the BBC later realised were far more uncomfortable than they first appeared.
Steady, east!
Fact 1.
Wouldn't you have waited till the afternoon?
Yeah, I could, but they couldn't because it was elastic.
Dad's Army relied heavily on repetition. Catchphrases became its comic engine. Audiences loved hearing familiar lines again and again. At the time, this felt comforting. Years later, some phrases sounded awkward. Language norms had shifted dramatically. Jokes once considered harmless felt blunt. Certain expressions carried unintended meanings. The BBC began to feel uneasy. Repeats highlighted these moments repeatedly. What once drew laughs now drew complaints. Context no longer softened impact. Comedy froze language in time. The show couldn't evolve its dialogue. That rigidity caused problems. Broadcasters debated edits. Some lines were quietly dropped. Others were reframed with disclaimers. Nostalgia clashed with modern sensitivity. Laughter became conditional, and once doubt entered, even beloved, jokes felt risky.
I would like one with a very grim and serious expression, you know, something like this.
You'll have to hold your hand absolutely still for 6 seconds.
Fact 2.
Whistle while you work. Hitler is at work. He's half army, so's his army. Whistle while you...
Dad's Army leaned on broad character types. Each role was exaggerated deliberately. This made jokes instantly readable. Subtlety was rarely the goal. Certain characters embodied national cliches, accents carried comedic weight, foreignness became punchline material, wartime attitudes shaped humour. At the time, this reflected common views. Decades later, it felt uncomfortable. Stereotypes stopped feeling innocent. Rewatching exposed how blunt some jokes were. The BBC faced criticism retroactively. Intent mattered less than impact. Comedy froze prejudice in amber. The show didn't question assumptions, it used them. That simplicity once worked perfectly. Later, it became problematic. The humour felt dated rather than gentle. Laughter turned uneasy. And that shift forced the BBC to reconsider what it celebrated.
Are men ready for inspection, Sergeant? Yes, sir, yes. One or two seem to be missing, though.
Fact 3.
Leave it to me, Jones.
Good heavens.
What do you mean, good heavens? Good heavens.
Dad's Army treated wartime Britain lightly. Danger rarely felt real. Bombs were mostly jokes. Fear became farce. The Home Guard felt charmingly incompetent. Real trauma was softened. This approach reassured audiences. It made history feel manageable. The BBC valued this tone. However, hindsight complicated things. War wasn't funny to everyone. Veterans watched with mixed feelings. Some felt represented kindly, others felt trivialized. The show avoided true loss. Death remained abstract. Consequences were rarely shown. That absence became noticeable. Comedy smoothed over pain. The BBC later questioned that comfort. Was history being rewritten emotionally? The laughs came at a cost. And once that question emerged, the tone felt less harmless. Fact 4.
Now, I'm going to have a word with these prisoners.
You can't speak any German, can you, sir?
They'll know by the tone of my voice that I'm in charge.
Dad's Army mocked leadership relentlessly. Officers were proud but ineffective. Orders were confused. Confidence outweighed competence. Authority became the joke. This delighted audiences. British comedy thrives on deflation. The BBC embraced this tradition, but it carried implications. Wartime leadership was ridiculed. Institutional trust was weakened. The joke never turned serious. Repetition normalised incompetence. The military became farce. Over time, this portrayal felt uncomfortable. Respect blurred into mockery. Satire flattened complexity. Leaders became cartoons. The BBC later distanced itself slightly. Context mattered more with age. The humour hit differently decades on, and undermining authority stopped feeling entirely playful.
While he was busy getting sozzled, I was getting a clear brain and a sharp eye.
Fact 5.
Look what happened when I tried to cure his sinus.
Yes, well, perhaps he just didn't like sleeping with a hot water bottle on his face.
Dad's Army stayed stylistically frozen. It never updated its voice. Characters remained unchanged. The humour stayed fixed. This consistency was praised. Audiences loved familiarity. The BBC saw stability as strength. However, culture kept moving. Jokes didn't adapt. Sensibilities shifted around the show. What once felt safe felt stubborn. The series resisted reinterpretation. It trusted nostalgia fully. That trust became risky. Repeats highlighted immobility. New viewers reacted differently. Context was no longer shared. The BBC faced growing discomfort. Editing became selective. The show survived, but carefully. Its legacy required management, and that need for control hinted at regret beneath the affection.
And to be absolutely fair, I shall divide them equally between you both.
That'll be 3 each.
Fact 6.
I've put my age on the bottom.
Dad's Army reflected the gender norms of its era. Women were often peripheral, their roles were limited and predictable. Authority remained overwhelmingly male. Female characters existed mainly for contrast. They were sensible where men were foolish, or decorative where men acted. This dynamic once felt normal. Comedy reinforced social expectations. Over time, those expectations shifted. Rewatching exposed imbalance. The humour leaned on outdated assumptions. Female agency was minimal. Independence was rarely explored. The BBC noticed audience discomfort. What once passed unnoticed now stood out. Representation became a discussion point. The show felt lopsided. Nostalgia softened criticism, but not fully. The laughter felt selective, and that selectivity made the BBC increasingly cautious.
Then you must see a lot of pictures.
Oh, yes. I see a lot of other things and all.
Fact 7.
To search the highways and the byways and call on all our friends, loved ones and relations so that they can
Rally to our bottle cry.
Dad's Army thrived on class distinctions, accents, signalled status instantly. Intelligence was often class-coded. Certain characters were meant to be laughed at, not with. This reflected long-standing British comedy traditions. The BBC had relied on them for decades. But repetition sharpened the edges. Punchlines targeted aspiration and ignorance. Mockery replaced warmth in places. Class became shorthand rather than theme. Subtlety was sacrificed for speed. Re-watching made this clear. The humour felt dismissive at times. The underdog wasn't always sympathetic. Laughter sometimes punched down. That imbalance became harder to ignore. Audiences became more sensitive. The BBC began framing the show carefully. Class jokes aged unevenly. Some still charmed, others stung. And once cruelty is noticed, nostalgia weakens.
I mentioned there was a sort of burnt taste about the porridge. So she picked up the pan and poured it in his own baguette.
Fact 8.
I'm fond of them both, of course. I like Mills bombs best, you know. I've always wanted to meet that Mr. Mills. He must have been a very clever man.
Dad's Army was endlessly repeated. Each rerun removed original context. Jokes detached from their era. New audiences lacked shared assumptions. What was once understood became ambiguous. Irony faded over time. Satire looked like endorsement. The BBC faced this challenge repeatedly. Editing could not solve everything. Disclaimers became necessary. Context had to be explained. Comedy was no longer self-contained. Repeats magnified flaws. They also preserved them. The show couldn't defend itself. It existed unchanged. That permanence became risky. Time altered interpretation. The BBC lost control of reception. Meaning shifted without consent. Laughter depended on explanation. And when comedy needs footnotes, regret isn't far behind.
I've wanted all my life to have these 2 extra stripes, but this is too high a price to pay.
And I think it's all wrong I should have to wear this ridiculous helmet.
Fact 9.
This is an ARP job, heavy rescue, and I'm in charge. I'm Chief Warden, remember?
The BBC evolved institutionally. Editorial standards tightened. Sensitivity increased. Dad's Army remained unchanged. Its tone belonged to another BBC. That mismatch created tension. The show represented a past identity. Modern values struggled to contain it. Celebration conflicted with caution. Pride clashed with responsibility. The BBC wanted to honour legacy. It also wanted to avoid harm. Dad's Army sat awkwardly between those goals. Editing felt like interference. Leaving it intact felt risky. Compromise became policy. Selective scheduling replaced prominence. The show was respected but managed. That management revealed unease. Comedy had become historical artifact. Not everything aged equally well. The BBC learned this publicly, and learning publicly always carries discomfort.
Rubbish, I'm in charge here. Look, I tell you why I'm in charge. These are my men and I am in charge, and that is that.
Fact 10.
Tell Jones to stay where he is and to shut his door.
Right.
But quietly.
Right. Jonesy, Mr. Mannering says, stay where you are.
Dad's Army rarely questioned its own assumptions. Jokes moved quickly, reflection wasn't required, comedy masked gaps, certain perspectives were absent, others were normalised. The show didn't interrogate its world, it assumed agreement. That assumption worked once. Later, it failed quietly. Rewatching exposed what wasn't said. Silence became noticeable. Absence became meaning. The BBC recognised this gap. What comedy ignores can matter. Laughter distracted from scrutiny. Time removed that distraction. Audiences noticed omissions. Representation felt incomplete. Questions emerged late. The show couldn't answer them. It could only be contextualised. And when comedy needs explanation, regret has already arrived.
And close the door.
Stay where I am and close the door.
That's right.
I can't reach it from here.
Fact 11.
I've made some careful notes of it all, and if you'll just hold on a wee, I'll give you 1 or 2 items that might interest you.
Dad's Army consistently framed failure as endearing. Mistakes were rarely punished. Incompetence became lovable. Responsibility was deflected with humour. Authority figures failed upward. Consequences were softened or ignored. This created a comforting fantasy. Audiences enjoyed harmless chaos. The BBC embraced this tone. However, repetition reinforced the message. Failure stopped being situational. It became expected behaviour. Serious responsibility felt optional. Over time, this felt indulgent. Leadership looked unserious. The joke never evolved. Context changed around it. What once felt reassuring felt evasive. Accountability was missing. The BBC noticed the shift, and once charm becomes excuse, laughter starts to curdle.
On November the 6th, 1940, you wasted 3 hours giving us a lecture on why the Germans don't play cricket.
Fact 12.
1, 2. Underneath the spreading chestnut tree, where I held you on.
Dad's Army presented Britain as quaint and unified. Conflict was external, not internal. Communities appeared harmonious. Social tensions were absent. This image felt comforting post-war. The BBC promoted this vision widely. Over time, it felt incomplete. Britain was more complex than shown. Diversity was missing. Change was ignored. National identity was simplified. Nostalgia replaced nuance. The show froze Britain in amber. That freeze became noticeable. Modern audiences questioned authenticity. The past felt curated. Memory felt selective. Pride edged into denial. The BBC grew cautious celebrating this version. History looked edited for comfort. And when nostalgia edits reality, regret follows quietly.
He expects you tomorrow, 6:30 sharp. Oh, yes, sir. He sends his compliments. Says, can you have your stick and gloves?
Fact 13.
I think I brought all the papers that you wanted to see. There they are.
Oh, yes, thank you, yes, sir.
Dad's Army reassured audiences relentlessly. Fear was neutralized with humor, threats dissolved into farce, safety was guaranteed. This made the show beloved. It also avoided discomfort. Real wartime anxiety disappeared, complexity was reduced, the BBC valued reassurance. Later it questioned omission. Comfort had replaced honesty. The war felt sanitized. Suffering was implied, not explored. Comedy shielded viewers. That shield became obvious. Historical truth felt softened. The balance tipped too far. Reassurance felt misleading. Audiences noticed the gap. The BBC adjusted framing slowly. Laughter no longer covered everything, and when truth peeks through comedy, regret isn't far behind.
And they want 16 shandies, ginger beer.
Well, it's a hot day. They're probably thirsty.
Fact 14.
Try it again, Jonesy.
Yeah, right. 9! You gotta be cruel to be kind.
Dad's Army became untouchable through repetition. Familiarity bred affection. Criticism felt disloyal. The show was culturally protected. The BBC benefited from this shield. Difficult questions were postponed. Familiar jokes discouraged analysis. Comfort replaced curiosity. Over time, scrutiny arrived anyway. Distance weakened protection. New viewers questioned assumptions. What was once sacred felt examinable. The BBC faced delayed reckoning. Legacy didn't prevent critique, it delayed it. When it arrived, it felt sharper. The show couldn't adapt. It existed unchanged. Familiarity lost its power. Comfort turned into vulnerability. And delayed scrutiny is always more uncomfortable.
I don't want any repetition of what happened in the public house this morning. We must not be seen in these uniforms. They must be hidden away until they're needed for shooting.
Fact 15.
Now I want you to be alert and on your toes at all times. What do I want?
Dad's Army remained widely loved. Affection never disappeared, but love didn't erase problems. Intent didn't outweigh effect. The BBC acknowledged this quietly. Context became essential. Celebration required explanation. Laughter needed framing. The show became a teaching moment. Comedy aged unevenly. Some jokes survived, others didn't. The BBC adjusted presentation carefully. Pride mixed with caution. Legacy demanded responsibility. The show was preserved, not promoted. Its place became conditional. Affection remained but qualified. The BBC learned from this balance. Love could coexist with regret. Comedy wasn't immune to time. And Dad's Army became proof that even beloved laughter leaves a trail.